Shalom, it's Levi Shore. Welcome back to this week of Torah. So as we got out of the Shabbos of Parsha Vayishlach, I was desperately hoping to check the news and hear of many rescues of hostages in Gaza. And unfortunately, I seem to be stuck in a very strange cycle. And the Parsha, it's like almost an eerie echo of what's going on right now. So first, I just want to encourage everyone, please keep pouring out the prayers, the tefillah to Hashem. Keep going through Tehillim, taking on mitzvos, learning Torah, doing gemilas chasadim, acts of kindness, whatever we can do. Because we need to open up the gates of Shemayim. We need to open up the gates of heaven, that Hashem is going to give us great help in this. It seems that we need Hashem to open the eyes of the IDF to be able to know exactly where the hostages are. And I don't know exactly what the military strategy is, but we need the hearts open of the generals and the politicians or whoever is directing the effort that the hostages need to get rescued, and quickly. And when it initially started, a couple weeks in, I think, the IDF, they rescued, I think her name is Ori Magidish. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly, but it was amazing. They rescued her from an apartment building, and I was hoping that would be the beginning. That would be the beginning of many, many rescues. And then we saw this strange thing where the IDF entered into the ceasefire, and I'm sure there's tremendous pressure from America and other countries around the world. And it was great in some ways to see, women and children getting out, and returning, from being kept. And we've heard stories of the horrendous conditions. But there's something that this week's Parsha just ripped open, and it's just so glaringly obvious. And the scary thing is that with the poor young women that were attacked and violated, I don't think any of them have been released yet. And after all they've been through, they need an immediate rescue. They shouldn't be a minute more with the evil people that have perpetrated this on them. They shouldn't spend another second in there, and they should return quickly to their families. And then the truly heartbreaking is, I think it's the Bibas family. It's little Kafir, I think he's 10 months old, this little smiley baby. And I think his brother is Ariel, and the mom and the father. And I forgot the current news on the father. And not any other of the Jewish people or the non-Jewish people that are trapped in Gaza should spend another minute. So what's so strange is there's a strange echo from Parsha Vayishlach, which we just read on this Shabbos we just left, and it's the story of Dinah, and it's so strange because there's tremendous parallels here of what's going on currently and what happened. And basically, Dinah was she was basically kidnapped and held hostage and violated by a man named Shechem, and it's the current city of Shechem, which is now called Nablus. And she was captured in the palace, and Shechem was the prince, and his father Hamor was the king, and they probably took her to some kind of castle fortress, where she couldn't get out. So it's very strange. Yaakov Avinu, Jacob, he was basically silent. So we don't know clearly what Yaakov's plan was, or what Yaakov thought about this, or what Yaakov wanted to do. But we see what happens is that the sons, especially Shimon and Levi. Now, what's even more miraculous is if we think about it, according to the Midrashim and chronology, I think Levi would be 13 and Shimon would be 13 and 7 months. And we don't think of young, boys, but the Torah calls them ish, a man, because technically, they're past the age of bar mitzvah. And they spoke instead of their father. and they were furious, and they said, should, a daughter, of Yisrael, be treated like a zona, be treated like a, improper woman, a lady of the evening. And they wanted to send a message that this should never happen to Jewish women. Now, we don't know Yaakov's exact plan. I mean, I'm sure that the plan was at the minimal to rescue her and probably, to kill, Shechem and Hamor, who perpetrated this, or Hamor, the king, who allowed this great immorality to happen. And then there's very interesting debate in the Meforshim that the citizens of Shechem, they were Canaani, they were descendants of Ham, they were from the African nations, and they had the status of a B'nai Noach, and there's 7 mitzvahs that apply to all the nations of the world. And the 7 mitzvahs is to set up a court system. So the act of stealing a person, kidnapping, holding something hostage, it's an act that the punishment can be death. And just the citizens of Shechem, especially the male citizens, by them not doing anything, not protesting, not trying to save her, are they guilty in this great sin? And so we don't know what Yaakov exactly wanted to do, but the sons propose that the citizens of Shechem should have to get a bris milah, and maybe the intention was that they couldn't control their Yetzer Hara, their evil impulse, and the bris milah would help them in this area of physical taiva, physical desire, and that they should take on the Torah. That a society that, especially the prince of society that engaged in these horrible acts, the one step besides the punishment that, was deserved was that to improve their society, that they must take on, the bris milah, the circumcision, and maybe geiros to convert. Because what they were proposing is, it says that Shechem, he was in love with Dinah and he wanted to marry her. And they were saying the only way that this can happen is through this, is through becoming like us, accepting the old Shemayim, the yoke of heaven, accepting the Torah and the mitzvos. And then there's very different stories that we're seeing back and forth, very different demands in this negotiation. And when Shechem is telling his people and Hamor is telling his people about it, they're like, oh, we're going to get, we're going to get their daughters as wives, and we'll get all their property, and everything they have will be ours. But it's also a very strange negotiation for Yaakov and his sons, because we see the great effort that Abraham went through to send Eliezer to get a wife for Yitzhak from his family, and that he did not want Yitzhak to marry one of the Canaani, because he didn't feel like their mitos, their character traits, were elevated enough to live an elevated and holy Torah, life. And then we see it again with Yaakov. And we see that Yitzhak and Rivka both sent him to Rivka's family to get wives, and he married Rachel and Leah. And it's so strange now that, the 11 of the tribes are born, 11 of the Shvatim, as they're called in the Torah, and then in this Parsha, Binyamin, the 12 tribes are going to be born. So it'd be so strange now that, especially after this horrible act, this act of violation, and they're still holding Dinah hostage, that they would want to join this people with this lowly kind of morality to the Jewish people as one people. So that's very strange on the surface. So on the 3rd day after they had all received the bris milah, and it's so strange, but Levi and Shimon and Levi, they go and they kill all the males in the city. And Yaakov is not happy about this, and we don't know exactly what Yaakov's plan was, but at the very least, it would be the rescue of Dinah, pulling her out of this captivity. And he's not quite happy with their plan. And and he's scared that because they're just one family and they're surrounded by all these different tribes of Canaanim, that they're greatly outnumbered and they could be wiped out. And we see very much the same situation right now. It seems very different on the surface Because on the surface, you have, I think Israel called up about 300,000 reservists, and there's supposedly only 40,000 Hamas fighters. But if you start to broaden our view, if we broaden our view to the global, perspective, you have Hezbollah with a mighty army in the north firing rockets and threatening to invade. You have Iran and Syria right there in the north. You have the Houthis in Yemen even starting to shoot ballistic missiles. You have massive pressure coming, unfortunately, from the Biden administration. And even though the U.S. military has a massive show of force in the region, the Americans are not, they're not sending their soldiers to actually help Israel with the fight. And the Biden administration is putting massive pressure on every step, and they even delayed Israel from, starting the war for 3 weeks when it all began, instead of rushing in and saving all these hostages. And then all the pressure from the UN and all the other nations around the world. And then all the Muslim nations surrounding. So there's probably that same fear that this could trigger, the global war, World War III. And there's a lot of pressure from that perspective. There's also a lot of tension that you're not going to hear so much in the media. And it's the tension between who should be running the Jewish people. The Jewish people, for 4,000 years, we've been a people, connected in our special relationship with Hashem and our connection of the Torah, the nation with the Torah. And that we're being led by secular leaders in Israel. And it's a huge disconnect right now. So we have that aspect of it too. But and then we see that Hashem, after this incident of Shechem, he put a fear onto the surrounding Canaanim. And even though it says in the Midrashim that there was 3 wars between the inhabitants of Canaan and Yaakov and his family, that there was a fear placed on them that they wouldn't wipe out and destroy Yaakov and his family. So one aspect that may be missing, and this is where we can increase as much as possible, is that we need Hashem's help. And every time we learn Torah, do mitzvos, say Tehillim, daven, tefillah, asking, crying out for Hashem's help, it's going to increase the merit. It's going to increase the chance of success. And not only can it assist in freeing the hostages, it can also protect the IDF soldiers as they embark in this battle. But I really hope to see something better, an immediate rescue of the hostages, and B'ezrat Hashem, we're about to head into this coming Shabbos, the Parsha of Yosef. So B'ezrat Hashem, we're very close to seeing the emergence of Yosef ben, Mashiach ben Yosef on the world stage. Wouldn't that be amazing? All right, a little more serious today. Hopefully we hear some better news soon. I hope to see you back again soon on Sweet and Good Torah.